Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and we are getting ready to invade Greece momentarily. We got a few things to do before, and again, I'm mentioning that. I want to thank Tim, Strongarm, Niagro, Timothy, Sir Toyjet, and Gary for support over on Patreon. But everybody else, what I really ask you guys you can do is if you can just lick the like button. That really helps. If you could, if you're new around here, smash the subscribe button. If it's red, just smash it. Smash the reds, and it also really helps to post a comment. Helps with that. Just say hi gamer, something like that, and maybe post your favorite country to play in, Hearts of Iron, whatever. Yeah, that'd be helpful. That's what I ask you guys to do, that hopefully I'm entertaining enough that you would follow through with that. So thank you all that would do that. Right, we're getting ready to invade Italy. But first we're looking at, because if we do this, 70 days. Standardization, specialization, get some more military factories. 35 days, cavalry attack, we have very little cavalry left. Self-propelled guns we can't do because we need army leaders, leadership experience gained. 70 days, 35 days. I like that. Increase artillery. Now that's artillery production cost goes down. That's nice. Anti-tank 70 days. That's nice. Keep specialization. Increase production. Okay, that's just the problem with that is it's only 730 days. I know it's a couple of years, but still. Okay. Strengthen northern Italy. Building slots, military. Civilian, military. Requires, okay, yes, I know it requires this. Sicily, Campania, Sardinia, naval bases, but these are okay. Let's look at factories. 2 civilian, 1 military, and the naval dockyard. We're here. Mostly bases and infrastructure. Consumer goods to factory strengthened. Okay, well, we'll do this for 35 days. Right. Okay, we have the ability to, the kingdom will join. Okay. A little bit. We have been talking on the live stream about, and we will continue this, was Mussolini and fascism good for Italy up until 1940, and they get Italy into the disastrous war, which wrecks any good that they might have done by such terrible destruction. Historically, it's not quite a whim, but it's without planning. Mussolini decides to, and maybe that is enough to call it a whim, decides to invade Greece. He's wanted to invade Greece prior to it. It isn't just like, hey, I woke up and I wanted to invade Greece. No, but it wasn't with good planning. It was not set up. Germany finds out about it, I understand, slightly before it starts, maybe. Still not sure about that, but need to look into it. But it's not really well organized with Germany, and Italy does very poorly. To the point when I say no planning is, and this is one thing we are talking about, Italy, and was fascism good? Farming for most of Europe, I'm trying to do this, and in the U.S., but at this time, was still labor intensive, still needed manpower. And I'm using manpower specifically, not just person power. Manpower is a critical element to it. Whenever we see, particularly I know more about it in Britain, but also in Germany, whenever you see women getting out onto the farm, work, and also the forestry work, cutting down trees, because warfare needs lots and lots of trees, wood. Not, I mean, they do burn junk wood that's not good for anything else as fuel for things, but rifle stocks need rather good quality wood, to the point that Japan does not have a source of wood that's good for rifle stocks. So all of the Arisaka rifles are made with two pieces of wood glued together, because they're sourcing out, whether in Japan or in Manchuria or wherever, Korea, none of the wood that they have of any scale, meaning, you gotta understand, you gotta make hundreds of thousands of these rifle stocks, not just, oh, we got 50 trees over there that might be perfect, but the idea of having forests full of them. They did not have them. They would not work. The wood just was not the right type of wood. So you can clearly see in the wood stocks where two pieces of wood are glued together to be able to make it strong enough and effective enough. They just don't. I mean, so it's, and even then it's still iffy. Thank you, Arno. Do appreciate it. Yes, as you may be seeing, I am streaming over on kick.com. I don't know if you guys want to watch over there. That would be really cool if you want to go over there and create an account and follow it. But I'm really sort of trying to hope to get anybody, be a sort of a big fish in a small pond. Anybody checking out kick.com, it's a Twitch clone, but trying to see, get noticed over there, and maybe they'll come and follow and subscribe and come over to other sources. We'll see how that goes, but thank you, Arno. So you need a tremendous amount of wood. Like the mosquito fighter in Britain was made out of wood. Lots of wood is being used all the time industrially for molds, for things. Need huge amounts of wood. Well, it's probably like they need 5 women to do, forestry work, which is cutting down trees and getting trees out of the forest. 5 women to do 2 man's worth of jobs because of the lack of upper body strength for women. And this is just a fact. I know people want to say everybody's the same. They're not. Sorry, they're not. And on the farm, it might not quite be that bad. It may be more like you need, because there is not everything is heavy work as cutting down trees. It might be needing 3 women for what would have been 2 men, kind of thing. So, and even then, yeah, you really got to sort of cooperate. And sometimes they need 3 women to do a single man's lifting and moving of something at times, just because of getting hold onto it and moving it around. It just isn't quite as capable. So you need a lot of manpower for farming. Modern day American farming, it is so industrialized now that they even do a lot of fruit picking with machines, basically shaking, but in where they are not doing it with machines, in America at least, and I think this is in many Western European countries as well. They're doing, shall we say, tedious work that, picking something or whatever, that may not be able to be mechanically picked yet. But it's able to do it without needing to heavy lift any one particular thing. So it's highly industrialized. It ain't yet in places like, yet in 1941, in places like Italy. It is more so in Britain, more so in Germany, but still not enough there at all. And because you've created large standing armies, and you have a tradition going back, as far as I know, into the past, of having dedicated soldiers, meaning their only job is to be a soldier, Roman legionaries, if you will. I'm specifically talking about them as well as other things. Now you get into the feudal system, in which a lot of the people outside of knights or whatever, a lot of the soldiery are secondarily soldiers, primarily like farm workers that are trained to use the longbow. When they're not farming, they're shooting their longbow. So they are a professional soldier, and that they are a well-trained, not a hastily trained, a well-trained soldier. But their normal day job, year in, year out, is being a farmer or some other agricultural type. Because they really, boy, Arno's spamming everywhere. Great job, Arno, with all the different links. Thank you. So if you want to follow social media, some I use more than others, but I'd love to have you around on the various platforms. So it's heavily manpower intensive. Armies would often, like I say, be lent out for farm use, but particularly once you've and we're getting back to the story of the invasion of Greece, don't worry, mass raised manpower, you have dramatically less food output. Now, I watched some of TIK's videos, a YouTuber, great guy. Don't agree with all of his opinions. I don't even necessarily. Most of the facts he's giving are very solid, shall we say. It's more sometimes, I would say, the interpretation of the facts. Kind of thing, shall we say, because I'm not so much questioning some of the stuff. And I think it was the Goebbels diary that he was quoting, and talking about Germany and the shortfalls in food production, and how Germany needed to invade in 1941 because of the shortfalls of, again, food production. And he's taking this as, and he's absolutely correct that these are facts in the sense that they're what was written in Goebbels' diaries. Okay, I'm not disputing that at all. So that's but he's taking them also, if you will, as to being the actual facts on the ground. I would take it as being, because I do know that they were increasing before the war starts, after the war starts, they're putting more and more land, both in Britain as well as in Germany, into agricultural production. They were taking land that was not agriculturally useful, not necessarily, and I think not primarily cutting down like forests, but just land that wasn't growing anything. Sometimes it's maybe, the farmer's land has been taken away to grow to do a railroad or a road or whatever, but then there's still a strip alongside of it that could be, because sometimes they take a fairly wide chunk of land and put the railroad on it, that could be turned into farmland. So sometimes it's marginal strip land, but sometimes it's just also, say, sides of hills that can be farmed. It's not as easy to farm. You don't even necessarily to the extent of terracing it, making it flat, as well as down in valleys in these areas that will be too wet to farm in, that need to, and you can go in and do drainage solutions so that the water drains away and doesn't stand in there, and the idea flowing off so that you can get the grow in areas, so that they're putting more and more, and also some of it just because I know this a bit more in Britain, but I think it's also the case in Germany, but I know it's the case in Britain. Food imports from the British colonies for things like wheat prior to outbreak of World War II was cheaper to bring it from, say, Canada or even out in Australia and bring it into Britain. So they were doing a lot of sort of high-end agriculture, primarily like beef, cows for milk, but steers for beef, because putting cattle on board ships and getting them across the Atlantic is a hard process to do, to keep them alive, to feed them while you're shipping them. And if you slaughter them before and try to get them across, you can salt meat. You can, beef, you can salt it down, but or can it or whatever. I mean, there's ways to do it. But in a civilian market, especially in the technology of the day, it wasn't terribly profitable to raise a bunch of, Texas cattle, slaughter it, and then ship it to Britain. It would be better just to grow your cattle in Britain. So a lot of the cheap imperial, from around the empire, they weren't bringing food too much. During World War I, they were bringing it from America, but I think they go back to looking at purely imperial. Because they didn't bring it from Canada or from Australia, because the manpower was going to the war, so they needed to use American manpower for growing the food during the war. After it, they wanted to give jobs back to Commonwealth people. So importing a lot of food into Britain of the bulk variety, the farmers just couldn't compete, so they didn't try. So, hey, Danny, Luke, how you doing? Grevna, yeah, good to have you back. So I know in Britain that there were a lot of farms that had farming potential, that the farmer it wasn't economically viable to do before the war starts. I do believe that is also to some degree a case in Germany, in which they are importing food, whether from the colonies or Eastern Europe or other things, especially after the war starts and before they go to the fight with the Soviet Union. Soviet Union shipping huge amounts of food in, but Soviet Union is also shipping in food at different times during the Weimar years. So there's a lot of that going on into Germany. And if you have cheaper food, it puts farmers out of work. And I know that there's a lot of problems around the various hyperinflation periods for Germany, including for the farming sector. I don't have a detailed lockdown, but I think it puts a lot of them off business, out of business, whatever you want to call it. So they don't necessarily produce a lot of food that they could be producing. And if you don't keep land in food production and you don't use it right, it takes a lot to get it back into productive capability. And I know that primarily being used, the Reichsarbeitsdienst, the RAD, that's the German labor service, was doing a lot of work, and it was mainly a male thing, though more and more eventually to the point that it becomes compulsory for young women to join this. Is that not so much that they're out there trying to grow food with the RAD. They are just to a degree. But what they're trying to do is have the RAD go out and get these fields or create fields for food production, so that then regular farming could be used for this. Now, again, on the sort of TIK thing in Goebbels' diary, is Goebbels is going, hey, we have such food shortages, we're importing food from, Turkey and some of the Balkans places from their conquests, and barely keeping the people alive, and trying to take any food that's over minimum requirements for, say, Poles or French or Danes or Dutch or whoever, any excess food, bring it to the Reich. They're definitely doing that. They have a huge standing army. And it's sort of like, if you have a hammer, all of the problems look like nails. So if that's your tool, you have a hammer. And I think this gets more, not so much into the reality of the situation, the real facts on the ground, but this shows maybe more clearly the Nazis' view of the problem. Is that they have not enough food, and they have a big army, and they want to go conquer land to get food. Instead of having the army go out and grow the food. Like I say, whether it's communist armies, Roman legionnaires, 18th century armies, a lot of times in Britain, even though the armies during peacetime were very small and the units were undermanned, they often during harvest or planting season, not like all year round, but during the sort of peak labor intensive times, a lot of those soldiers were one way or another, one reason or another, out doing farm labor. Often their colonel or battalion commander was getting paid to have their soldiers go do work, kind of thing. So it was going into somebody's pocket. But that very much was the thing. Well, that's what was going on at roughly about this time. Spring planting in Italy, because we're going to very close to, I don't know the exact historical dates for the invasion of Greece. A lot of the divisions that were sort of around here, a lot of them had a portion, let's just go with like 30% of their manpower wasn't with their military unit. It was wherever, maybe not terribly far away, but it was other places doing farm labor during spring planting. And like I say, this isn't like a last moment, hey, this just occurred to me, we got to invade Greece. But it was very much of the idea that things weren't going terribly well in, North Africa here for Italy. And you can't, and as we've talked about, you can't just put in 3 or 4 more divisions, because it's supply is as much of the problem as anything else. There was not, how best to show this. There was not this railway that is here now. This did not exist. There might be a few short railways around here, but I don't think anything on the scale of leaving any one of these provinces. There was the Via Balboa, which was championed and sort of done by Balboa. That's why it's named after him. So there is a nice 2-lane sort of highway, not Autobahn with, banked roads like we think of a modern, because that was only to scale. There are some examples in Britain of an Autobahn-like thing. There are some examples in America. No federal highways in America before World War II or during World War II. But we can look at the Pasadena Freeway, which still exists and is... I don't like driving on it. It's a bit of a hell of a thing. That did pre-exist World War II and is getting down the idea of an Autobahn, but these are mostly short. Because basically the Pasadena Freeway goes from LA out to Pasadena, which is in LA County. It's just, a few miles of sort of highway of whatever, like that, and not as well banked, not as well done as the Autobahn was, but it's getting to that idea, and the idea that you have a roadway with no intersecting streets. If there's anything like that, they either go over it on a bridge or under it on a tunnel, so you didn't have any cross traffic. That's the idea, is what I'm talking about. This Via Balboa, well, I'm sure there was, if there's, gets to and goes through a place like Benghazi, yeah, there's probably cross traffic. So it's not like an Autobahn highway, but it is a paved road that Italy does have along here. So, but this is not, this railway is not historical. So you can't just supply more divisions down here just to throw more in there. So partially, I would say, over frustration over the, I can see it with the Axis. Every single major axis of the three major nations, Italy, Germany, and Japan, all three of them have frustrations in one war, so they add a new war to the war. Japan cannot defeat China. It decides to attack. Of course, they want the oil, and they also want steel from America, but they want the oil down in Dutch Indonesia, or Dutch East Indies at the time, and know that they're going to have to go to war with Britain to get them, and believe that America will come into that war against them. They may or may not have, but it's quite possible they could have, but I think Japan overly presumes that. So they also attack America. So you can't win a war with China. Let's add America to the war, and that must be a good plan. Germany cannot defeat Britain, so let's add the Soviet war to it. Italy cannot defeat Britain, in North Africa, and is losing or lost. By this point, it's lost by this time in 41, I do believe. But I'm not absolutely sure on the date of the collapse of... It takes a while for Britain to gather enough forces and to push into Ethiopia. And it's enough time that historically the Italians do take British Somaliland and force the British to flee out from there and successfully take it. This is, at the time, basically Vichy France like it is here, so they don't occupy that. And basically, once Britain gets its forces together, it's just a series of conquests to, victory after victory to get up and get Ethiopia and destroy it. It takes a while, but it's not that hard to do, but it's more like getting things organized up there. So in frustration of all of this, he thinks he, like I say, has long wanted Greece to become part of the Nuovo Romano Empire, the new Roman Empire. And you can see strategically that with Malta here and your supply situation is either, coming across Malta to here, or is coming out of Italy across all this ocean to over, probably to Benghazi or maybe up to Tobruk, while the British submarines that are operating all around here, while the British Navy, the British Air Force is all operating in and causing problems to this shipping. You can see how getting Greece, well, you can, instead of, you can put aircraft out here. You can put small ships going after subs. You can have instead of, ship coming out of, Toronto up here and coming all the way down to here, you can't hug the Greek coastline while it's neutral, so you're sort of out at sea. Well, now you can just, once you get here, you can come from Brindisi over to, here, put it on rail, in theory at least, put it on railways, come down to Athens, put it on ships. Now, ships that, again, have air cover from all these islands and whatnot, come down here, and then all they got to do is make a short, relatively speaking, shorter run to supply. So you can see how strategic positioning by getting Greece can be seen to help supply, can be seen to help in your war with the British. So it's not as crazy as, hey, we can't defeat Britain. We've tried to defeat it in the air and that's failed. We've tried to defeat it out at sea with submarines. That's failed. We've yet to try to, put all of our soldiers on barges and take them across because we think either it'll fail or it'll just be bloody costly. And so we have this problem. Well, let's see. Let's attack Russia. Oh, they finally took this over. Okay. So, this is just a crazy thing. You have a war you can't win. And so you're on a defensive. Again, think about this, people. You're Germany. You're an industrialized power. You got factories. You're making things. We're not talking about Afghanistan or Nepal or Liberia or even Argentina. Yeah, because there's factories in Argentina, but they're not many and not hugely industrialized. Not at all. Mostly they don't. Well, they do make some tanks, but I think they're just prototypes during this time period. I think they're just prototypes. So they're, in a workshop you can create a tank or 5 or 10. But Germany can crank out tanks, can crank out submarines, can crank out aircraft. They can't defeat Britain. They cannot either. And of course they got the technology to add fuel tanks to aircraft. But you have to, I don't know when they get into the idea of drop tanks for the German aircraft. I really don't know. I'm not an aircraft specialist, but I do know the BF-109 is a very short-ranged aircraft. Yes, you could do a drop tank, and it needs to be a drop tank in that an external fuel tank that you get rid of to get into fighting. So it has super short time over London. That it can stay and fight. I mean, just like less than 5 or 10 minutes, and then it has to turn around and go home. Because if it's been flying for 5 or 10 minutes or some time like that over London at air war fuel usage, going hard at it, they're not going to be able to make it back to their air bases without crashing into the sea. So they have just a few minutes time, and they've got to turn around. There's nothing else they can do. Now, it doesn't take long to have a bombing run happen. If you're not wandering around looking for your target, you're coming in on target and you just fly over and you drop your bombs and you turn around and go back, whether daylight bombing or night bombing over London or some other air base or something, it doesn't take a long time. But what it does do, and so you can maybe keep to some degree the enemy fighters off of your bombers, so they drop their bombs and go home, and then you've got to go home. But you can't stay and keep fighting the enemy. The enemy, it's a quick combat. You get to shoot down however many you can in that brief period of time, then you've got to go home. Even if you have ammo in your aircraft, and even though you've got a guy you're almost ready to go on, warning, running out of fuel, so then you have to let that guy live and head back to Britain. So they cannot win. So with a drop tank, if you got it, the aircraft can lift it, and you make a big drop tank. So, but I don't know why. I don't know why they don't do this, or maybe they do, and that's only how good it is. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert, because I know America, eventually gets aircraft that can do a decent amount of fighting over Berlin, and then fighters can, the Mustang and the Thunderbolt can get here and get all the way back. So Germany is not able to win the air war over Britain. And again, yes, Germany is a tactical air force, not a strategic air force. I understand that. But they can't even clear the skies over Britain enough that they feel comfortable enough in... Man, there's a lot of fighting going on right here, as we can see here. They don't feel comfortable enough in doing a naval invasion across the way. And doing it at night is just going to be a hell of a problem. I know the Allies get across at night, and then dawn the Germans wake up. If you've seen, and you should see The Longest Day movie if you haven't seen the movie The Longest Day, but that's America and Britain, supreme naval powers, understanding and controlling everything gets across. Germany, to try to do that at night and the confusion that it would be, because presumably you're doing it at night because you don't want to have lots of lights everywhere, or you want to be hidden from air attack or ship attack, so you don't have lots of lights, everything turned on, so like, hey, you know, we can all see everybody, not run into each other. They would be running into each other. There would be navigation problems. The idea that all these barges that, you know, that are powered barges, but that would get across this channel, and they could, in reasonable conditions, get across the channel, no problem. To do that at night and to presume that they're going to be anywhere near the correct beaches once they get there, it's going to be confused as hell. They got to do it in the daylight. So, and you know, they can't do it stealthily at night. So they got to do it in the daylight. So all it takes are you know, strafing machine guns, bombers, motor torpedo boats, submarines, and the main fleet coming down from here. And, you know, I don't think it'd be a suicide mission for the main fleet, but it would definitely be hugely costly, again, from German air attacks. But it's just too costly for Germany as figures to get across this way in daylight. So Germany cannot get across this. Germany could, I mean, you know, think about it. Yeah, Germany could start building dedicated landing craft, start building, you know, they're technologically capable, and what is coming in early in 1940 wasn't there, is the Focke-Wulf 190, which I do believe has a little bit greater air operational range at the time. But they could build an air force that could hang out over here. They could build more ships. They could build more bombers, build a few more dedicated you know, landing craft type vessels. Instead of doing all of that to win this war, to bring this war to conclusion, or instead of, because there's also another front going on, you know, before this is a pure Italian front. Germany ain't anywhere near this. You know, when we think of Kesselring, who is Albert Kesselring, eventually Field Marshal Kesselring, he is the guy who's in charge of the Mediterranean front. Under him is Rommel, who's in charge of the ground forces, at least, of the Germans, and initially very much he's under Italian command. Maybe this guy here. Bagliolo, I'm not absolutely sure, but under one of the guys, and and early on he just, you know, doesn't even have a full division, and as things are coming up, so he's just initially just a minor support element. And as time goes on, he becomes the dominant general as his forces get bigger, and he's winning. So that's more like the Italians are supporting him. But early on, none of that's here. There aren't any German submarines. There aren't any German aircraft. Nothing is going on. Nothing has happened. It's the Italians versus the British until the whole Yugoslavian debacle of it briefly for a few hours joining the Axis, and then there's a coup, and then that sort of gives enough excuse for the Germans to occupy it. And the Germans are getting ready to maybe, you know, there's already, I think, some build up for coming into maybe helping through Bulgaria and helping Greece, but it's really post taking down Yugoslavia, because that is sort of a surprise to the Germans. And then they come down and take Greece, and it's only after Germany takes Greece does Germany start setting up the Africa Corps and put Kesselring in Commando Supremo here in Rome. Hey, thanks for following. Do appreciate it. Good to have you here. Sunflower, I see. Cool. So, you know, it's only that late into, you know, and so that is basically you're only getting the Africa Corps set up as Barbarossa is starting. Oh, you're Japanese. Well, for me it would be Ohio gozaimasu. For you it would be, is it konbanwa? Is it evening there? Skoshi nihongo o hanashimasu. I took it for 3 years, many years ago, Japanese, Nihongo, many years ago, back in high school, 20 plus years ago. So my Japanese is very bad, but good to have you here, Sunflower. And so, there's, so Germany's only coming into the Mediterranean once Barbarossa's starting. Before Barbarossa, they're coming into Yugoslavia and Greece, which, yes, is the Mediterranean, but only really setting up to fight the British. I don't read, I barely knew hiragana way back whenever. Katakana, so let me see if I can highlight that and translate that. Copy here. Just a second, I want to translate this. Use good old Google Translate here. It's 3 o'clock in the evening. Okay, cool. So, that would be, just konnichiwa, I would say. Is that a good evening? Yes. And you're starting to run out of my level of Japanese. So Germany does not, is not able to invade Britain, is not able to cut Britain off with the Navy, either with, the Bismarck out around, or the Graspe out, being commerce raiders, or without U-boats out there. They're not able to cut it off that way, and they don't come in with their big hammer, if you will. And they're, to a point, it's the same problem of just throwing more divisions down into North Africa doesn't necessarily win you the war. But particularly German panzer divisions, are significantly better than the Italian armored divisions. And as we see that once Rommel is down there, even Panzer Is are somewhat useful. Panzer IIs are a bit more useful, but Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs are very useful. That had they been put in 1940, I don't know why the day after the armistice is signed, let alone the day after Italy joins the war, which is about the time that Germany's coming into Paris, that there isn't planning to send support down into the Mediterranean. Once it's no longer needed here. Because even if you're planning on invading Britain, I don't know why you're not moving some of the Luftwaffe, some of the Kriegsmarine elements, because you can get, it's difficult, but you can get submarines out through the Straits of Gibraltar during this time period. It's difficult, but it's possible. You can also build or assemble some subs here, but I get the subs. Maybe you want to at that time concentrate on Britain out there, maybe, but there's other uses, and the idea of moving because you got a bunch of panzer divisions. Why aren't you the day after the end of the Battle of France, starting to talk with the Italians about getting a panzer division down to North Africa? They don't. And so the idiocy of, hey, we can't win here. Well, we have this great land fighting army. Well, let's go fight another war. We'll sort of ignore this other war. It will just, take care of itself? Yeah, I get the sort of point that, they're cranking out U-boats and they think they're going to ramp up and get enough U-boats out there that's going to overwhelm them. I know that, okay, but take care of one problem before getting more problems. And they don't. And the same with the Japanese. Same with the Italians. So, but on a smaller scale. But then the whole war is on the smaller scale. Now, why am I invading Greece? Well, partially because it's just historical. Partially it's gameplay reasons, because there will be resources, there will be industry that we can take down here. And I think we can do it. Now we have a larger army we have currently down here than they did historically. We have more frontier, so we'll be able to do this better. So yes, we will declare war, annex, and I don't think we're going to call allies, because I want to move in here as fast as possible. Okay.
Sì, signore. Sì, signore. Avanzate.
And that was mountain, so we're going to
Pronto
attack
all'azione.
here.
Pronto, signore. Avanzate. Ordini. Ordini.
You go there. You come here.
Pronto, signore. Avanzate. Sì, signore. Sì, signore. Avanzate. Avanzate. Ordini. Ordini.
Okay, so. Yep, they joined the allies. Knew they would.
Sì, signore.
If you've noticed, I've left my armor out from in the attack. It would eventually be here. Helpful. Let's take a look. We are doing very well for air. Navy, well, doesn't really matter. They're still controlling this. Now, by getting down into Greece, we'll have better control of the Adriatic with our positioning. Once we get Greece's controlling Greece.
Pronto all'azione. Pronto all'azione.
Let's just. Part of the reason I didn't send these guys down earlier was just supply issues. But now that we have
Avanzate.
actual combat, let's get them down there. No problem, Sunflower. Okay, so we pushed into here.
Attento.
Yeah, we'll just keep pushing.
Avanzate. Pronto, signore. Sì, signore. Pronto.
Okay, now we defeated this unit here.
Sì, signore.
So we're going to move one
Formazione.
armored division down into Thessaloniki.
Formazione.
And you're going to come down the railway here. And so
Comandi.
are you. Okay, well, you attack.
Formazione.
There.
Formazione. Formazione.
blue line production. Very good.
Sì, signore. Formazione. Formazione. Sì, signore. Pronto. Sì, signore. Comandi. Pronto, signore. Attento. Pronto. Ordini. Pronto, signore. Pronto all'azione. Avanzate. Attento. Pronto, signore.
Pinning attack there to hold them down.
Pronto, signore. Pronto, signore. Ordini. Ordini. Formazione. Avanzate. Pronto, signore. Formazione.
Okay, we've got air superiority, so they are doing some naval bombardment. So lovely, their ships are sitting in here.
Pronto, signore. Avanzate. Attento. Pronto all'azione.
Pushing to there.
Ordini. Sì, signore. Pronto, signore.
Support that attack.
Ordini. Pronto. Pronto, signore. Avanzate. Avanzate.
So far, we've been moving very fast. Surprisingly fast in my
Pronto
opinion, but
all'azione.
very good.
Comandi. Pronto, signore. Attento.
Okay, well. I think we want to go there.
Sì, signore.
I know it's mountainous, but it gets us through the railroad. We want the railroad down through to here to keep supply going. Okay, push that way. You guys push on. Yeah.
Pronto all'azione.
reactors. Well, I want more small fighters. Let's take a look here. Okay, we're still building that one. These supply hubs take a lot to build. And that's sort of why I started it as early as I did, but it's taking longer than I thought. Yeah, no, that looks good though. Can you make a new tank model? Yeah, we probably could. Don't know, should we though? That's what we have here, I believe, here. Back. Tank mod. Yeah, we have the 3-man turret, so fixed superstructure, 1-man turret, 2-man. Okay, we already have the best turret that we can have currently for medium. We currently have main armament, small cannon. Maybe medium cannon would be good. Oh, shit, stop. I didn't know we were still going forward. I gotta get back to the war. We can improve trains, but I'm not planning on doing so. Let's change the picture. For this variant. Assault guns or that. Well. Let's do this safe. Okay. Now, okay, well, let's make sure I'm here. Let's convert over to this. So we're currently making 3.5 a week. Oh no, I lost it. No, that was looking here. Okay, so we're making here. So we're improved up to that. Improved airframe. We'll see about doing that. Okay, now back to the war.
Pronto, signore. Avanzate. Ordini.
One division goes. The other division just come down to Athens.
Formazione.
Those come up this way.
Attento.
Yes, potato.
Ordini.
And we can do more research, right?
Pronto, signore.
Support that attack.
Sì, signore.
And it's time to end this episode. Not the live stream. Live stream will be continuing, but I want to thank everyone for getting this far. I do appreciate it. We will continue next time our conquest of Greece. Thanks so much. See you then.